Hi everyone, welcome to another exciting episode of the Financial Insight Show. In our energy series, we continue having candid conversations around subjects that are pertinent to the sector. And with me is Nkusuwila Nachalwe of Nkusuwila Nachalwe Advocates, who is going to tell me a little bit about what's going on in the regulatory framework. Nkusuwila, how are you doing?
I'm well, thank you. And how are you?
I'm well. It's so good to finally get you into the studio.
It's a pleasure, actually.
Absolutely. And before we get going, maybe just tell our viewers a little bit about, who you are and, the firm that you represent.
Okay. So I'm basically a legal practitioner who decided to specialize in energy law and environment. It's a double, actually. I did a double master's in energy and environmental law from the University of Birmingham. And I've been practicing law 20 and a half years.
How long have you been at the bar?
20 and a half years.
Wow, amazing,
yes.
Amazing.
And I founded my firm about 14 years ago. So I've been running Nkusuwila Nachalwe Advocates as a firm.
Okay.
And I've got also other qualifications, obviously, which pertain to governance, to alternative dispute resolution, and and all that.
That's all very, very interesting. Now, obviously, we at Financial Insight, we've been running what we're calling the Energy Series, and it's obviously very important for us to understand what the landscape is actually looking like. For our viewers, are you able to just give us an overview of what the current regulatory landscape is around energy?
Okay. The pleasure is mine, actually. It's the regulatory framework, including institutional framework and policy framework, are very, very cardinal to regulating a sector like energy, especially now when we have a serious energy deficit. Correct. And everybody is weighing in on the issues that surround that. So currently in Zambia we have the energy policy, which is 2019. That's the current. And then we have 4 principal legislation that regulate. So that would be the Energy Regulation Act, number 12 of 2019. Then we have the Rural Electrification Act, number 5 of 2023, which basically repealed and replaced the 2003 Act. And then we have the Electricity Act, number 11, 2019, which is, in my view, in the context where we're speaking, that is really cardinal, because it will speak to the policy pronouncements by the energy minister concerning the open access, net metering, and all those things we're going to see fairly in the near future, as well as the Petroleum Act, chapter number 435 of the laws of Zambia. So those are the principal acts that, together with the policy, that regulate the energy sector for Zambia. So the policy really is a blueprint. It's an embodiment of a statement, the government's intent on how they want to develop the sector. So that is the document that informs all the regulatory amendments and the promulgations of the law to regulate the sector. So that is where the instruction comes from. So government does a policy, and then from there it informs the legislative drafting people to regulate and promulgate the laws.
Okay.
Yeah. In a nutshell.
In a nutshell. Yeah. Okay, that's quite interesting. Now, obviously, in times like this, for many, they would want to understand what the role of the regulator actually is in all of this, and why certain sectors insist on having an independent regulatory body. Any comments around that?
Oh yes. Obviously, in our context for Zambia, the regulator we know is the Energy Regulation Board, which is a creature of the Energy Regulation Act. So it's really, really important to have an independent regulator for so many reasons, because it fosters fairness, transparency, and efficiency in the sector. And also, when the regulator is strengthened, it becomes autonomous, and then it enhances regulatory certainty, which attract foreign direct investment and ensure that there's objectivity in tariff and standard setting. So any investor worth their money, they know that they can only invest in an environment that has an independent regulator, for the simple reason that there will be consumer protection, there will be safeguards that will be, you know, safeguarding of the interests of the consumers, you and I, for instance, home users, and even the generators of power that we are talking about. It's not just ZESCO. You see, lately there have been players that have come on, the independent power producers that need that kind of protection. There's investment confidence, which really fosters the investor confidence, because like for the reasons that I've said, there's this, when there's an independent regulator, there's an essence of being unbiased, you know, when it comes to how they should regulate in terms of reviewing tariffs, for instance. That really touches upon, like you've seen how when ZESCO wants to revise the tariffs, they would go through the regulator and then they would okay them, or they'll say no, for varied reasons. And then also the autonomy, which I've touched upon, independence is really, really key, because you want somebody, not just amongst the players, but somebody else who's got that oversight of all the players and treating them equally and fairly. And then again, market efficiency, which promotes competition and efficiency, like I've said, in the market generally. And then the oversight, which I've talked about, because oversight will entail compliance, ensuring that there's enforcement, because you don't want people to just set up, whether it's setting up a service station without regulation, without the input of the Energy Regulation Board. You want sanity in the market. That's what basically it's about.
Okay, so that means, and maybe let me just touch on the issue of investment, which you just spoke about. That means that it becomes very cardinal to have a very, very comprehensive energy policy. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, it does. And my honest view, I've reviewed the NEP, which is an energy, the National Energy Policy 2019. I think it's ripe now for a review, just for the simple reason of what is going on right now, because I think we can all agree that hydroelectric power is no longer sufficient to serve the needs of the Zambian people, Zambian consumers, and corporates alike. So with coming in of renewable energy, for instance, there has to be a deliberate, I know government is doing quite a bit, and they've done a bit, but now the situation where we are is calling for a more robust way of pushing for renewable energy uptake. We're doing something, yes, but I think we can do much more. And when I speak about, I'm very passionate about renewable energy for the simple reason that once you promote it and it develops in a certain way, what you're doing, you're not just bringing in relief for that energy deficit. You're also complying with the NDCs that speaks about carbon reduction, just transition. We're grappling with climate change world over. So that will be a role that renewable energy promotion will do in terms of trying to bring the carbon dioxide to acceptable limits.
Right. But, now, so obviously now, especially around the push around renewables, how important is having solid policies around renewables for them to actually flourish? And what would you say is obviously important as well around the stability and having a predictable regulatory environment?
It's very, very key in the context that having a predictable and predictable policy, because policy is what gives a strategic direction and what the objectives and goals and long-term goals that governments want to achieve. So it will actually incentivize investment, because you know that from government's direction, this is what they're pushing. So any investor who has got an appetite to take something up in Zambia will be looking to, okay, so how does this policy look like? Will I be will my investment be secured? So the targets will be set for establishing renewable energy and the mandates to drive the adoption. And it will also help with facilitating into like market entry by simplifying licensing and permitting processes to encourage new entrants in the renewable energy sector. Yeah.
Right, right. Now, obviously, that's very interesting. But on a final note, from the conversations that you've had, like with various energy players, how would you say they've responded to, like the policies that are in place at the moment?
Okay, so even just from research, you could actually see that the NEP is a starting point. It really needs to be refreshed. We need to take into account, I know there's mention of renewable energy and they've outlined, but really when you speak to the people out there, a lot of common people would talk about energy, they think about petroleum and just electricity.
Right.
Electricity, but we're talking about, Zambia is predominantly 85%, I think, hydroelectric. But if the policy would be more robust in terms of pushing the uptake of solar, which they're really doing, but I think they can do better. So I think that will help in terms of growing this sector much more than what we're actually doing right now. And I think the deficit has agitated this. I speak about this because about 30, maybe like we've had the Kariba, the Kariba Dam,
Yes.
like over 50, 60 years in the making. We should have diversified our energy mix like 30 years ago, because climate change was predicted then. We knew that the water resources were going to deplete. Now, to sit and just wait because we have hydroelectric power, I think the last 15 years has shown us that that is so vulnerable to the risk of depletion because of climate change. So do we need to really focus on hydroelectric power? My thoughts are that we should focus on other sources that we need to push so that we can have that balance. Because at some point, the Kariba will dry up. And are we still going to just sit back and look and say, okay, we have the rivers, we have this? Climate change has shown us otherwise. So I think now is the time. We should have done it 30 years ago, but still now is the time to look at it and say, let's focus on something. Look, there's also another energy source, nuclear energy. I know there's a lot of myths around it, but that's one area. At some point, we may have to, even if it means research and development, we need to have a look and have a look at what that brings, because it's got zero carbon emissions and it's safe. Unlike what people say, it's safe, it's highly regulated, but it would give a good output. Like, because now we need not go to like a heavy duty nuclear energy plant. There are small modular reactors that are out there in the market that can be used for a certain section of a province, and it can produce. I mean, that's controversial, but other people feel that way. But I feel that it's one energy source we must consider as we diversify our energy mix.
Absolutely. So, in short, having a robust regulatory framework is cardinal, especially around attracting investment. I think maybe just as a key takeaway, how do you see the regulatory landscape evolving, especially now that it's more of a call to action in a way?
Yeah. Okay, so for me, I looked at the ministers' the pronouncements, because that's also a policy pronouncement.
Correct, yes, correct.
And when that is done, I looked at the statement. Clearly, he's drawing his authority from an act. That's why I talked about the Electricity Act.
Correct.
It's underplayed, but it's really an act that we should actually be riding on.
Right.
So he actually draws his authority from section 52.2, N and M, N and O, because it's really an enabling section that allows him to promulgate those regulations. And I reckon that the regulations that we're going to see concerning open access and net metering will stem from there. And this will allow players, including households, to generate electricity and feed back into the national grid. They'll probably get income, but at the same time, in other jurisdictions, they offset the bill. Right. So I think that is a very, very progressive, and we should have done that like many, many years ago. Why do I say so? When I single out solar energy, for instance, it's something you and I can generate from the top of our, our house, the roofs of our houses. And it can easily feed into the grid, and then we can, generate some money or offset. Everybody needs an offset. But you see, when we have a deficit like this, and when we have, it's about now, where do we direct the energy that is available? That's why now you see that people who are seemingly not very essential are being subjected to almost 24 hours without power. That cannot be a way to live, and it's not sustainable. So something has got to give. So I really think I'm very excited about the open access and net metering, because we'll now have a competition will be agitated. We'll no longer be saying, oh, ZESCO this, ZESCO that. It will sit up if it's the one that's, I have other, but we'll have competition. With competition comes down to, it regulates itself in terms of the pricing and everything else. So I would choose, like a person who's big on renewable energy and climate change and anything to do with environmental protection, I would choose, like the people in the UK do, to buy power from a source that is green. For instance, someone that is generating wind energy or solar energy, whatever it is. I would choose that over something that is going to deplete the resources and impact the environment negatively. So, yeah, I'm excited for that. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Nkusuwila, thank you so much for coming to the show. And we look forward to getting some more insights from you regarding this subject matter.
Awesome. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard for yourself. We've been sitting down with Nkusuwila, who's been telling us about the regulatory landscape in Zambia. Stay tuned for more insights from the Energy series from Financial Insight, and get to know.